And before you click off thinking this is going to be some dry documentary recitation, I'm telling you right now, this case breaks every single pattern you've ever heard about. So hit that subscribe button because we're going deep. And trust me, you're going to want to follow this channel after today. Okay, so here's the thing that gets me about this case. We always hear about serial killers working alone, right? Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, BTK, lone wolves. Or we hear about couples where one person is clearly dominant and the other is just terrified, manipulated, going along with it. But Fred and Rose West? They don't fit either box. And that's what makes this so disturbing. 25 Cromwell Street in Gloucester, England. From the outside, completely ordinary. A boarding house, students renting rooms, people coming and going, neighbors hearing construction noise at weird hours but thinking, whatever, the guy's just doing renovations. Except he wasn't doing renovations. He was burying bodies. Multiple bodies. Under the cellar, under the bathroom, in the garden. And this went on for decades. The house itself was this 3-story Victorian terrace in a working-class neighborhood. Nothing fancy. The kind of place you'd walk past without a second glance. Inside, it was chaotic. Rose running her prostitution business from specially modified rooms on the upper floors. Lodgers coming and going. Children everywhere. And beneath all that noise and activity, silence. The permanent silence of 12 murdered women. So let me back up, because you need to understand who these people were before they met. Fred West was born in 1941 in a rural village in Herefordshire, a place called Much Marcle. And look, I'm not going to do the whole broken childhood excuse thing, but his upbringing was messed up. There are reports, credible ones, that his father sexually abused his daughters and basically taught Fred that women were objects. That incest was normal. Fred himself claimed he had a relationship with his mother. Whether that's true or him just being a sick liar, I don't know. But by the time he's a teenager, he's already assaulting girls. At 17, he's accused of getting a 13-year-old pregnant. A 13-year-old. He escapes serious charges because the family doesn't press it. His family, by the way. They knew. They had to know something was wrong with him. But this was rural England in the 1950s, and people didn't talk about these things. They swept it under the rug. They protected their own. And that protection allowed Fred to keep going. Then, at 20, he has a motorcycle accident that leaves him with a metal plate in his head and in a coma for a week. Some people say this changed him, made him more violent, damaged something in his brain. But honestly, I think he was always going to be a predator. The accident just maybe removed whatever tiny filter he had left. After the accident, people noticed he'd fly into rages more easily. He'd have these blackouts where he couldn't remember what he'd done. But again, nobody did anything. Nobody intervened. He just kept moving through life, leaving destruction in his wake. He marries a woman named Rena in 1962 in Scotland. She's a sex worker with her own troubled background, and Fred's already showing signs of extreme sexual deviance and violence. The marriage is volatile from the start. Fred's obsessed with violent sexual acts, with controlling Rena completely. She tries to leave him multiple times, but keeps coming back, probably because she's got nowhere else to go. They have a daughter, Charmaine, though she's probably not Fred's biological child, likely the result of Rena's sex work, and then another daughter, Anna Marie, who is Fred's. And here's where it starts. In 1966 or 67, the exact date is unclear, Fred kills a young woman named Anna McFall. She was Rena's friend, working as their nanny and babysitter. She's 18 years old, and she makes the fatal mistake of getting pregnant with Fred's child and probably demanding he leave Rena for her. Fred's solution? He strangles her, dismembers her body with almost surgical precision, removing fingers and toes, a pattern he'll repeat with future victims, and buries her in a field near the caravan where they're living. Nobody notices. Nobody reports it properly. Anna's family assumes she's just run off with some guy. And Fred learns something crucial. He can get away with this. He can kill someone, cut them into pieces, bury them, and just continue his life like nothing happened. That's the moment. That's when he realizes he's untouchable. Now, before you hit me with the, "Oh, so Fred was the killer and Rose was just there" argument, stop. Because Rose Letts, later Rose West, was not some innocent bystander. And this is where the case gets really complicated, because people want to see her as a victim too. She was born in 1953 in Devon, making her 12 years younger than Fred. Her childhood was also horrific. Her father, Bill Letts, was schizophrenic and violent, possibly sexually abusive, definitely controlling. He'd beat Rose and her siblings with a belt, sometimes for no reason at all. Her mother, Daisy, suffered from severe depression and had electroconvulsive therapy while pregnant with Rose, which some people think might have caused Rose's behavioral issues. Rose herself showed signs of serious behavioral problems from a young age. She was sexually precocious in disturbing ways, aggressive, had violent outbursts at school. Teachers noted she was different, that something was off. But again, this was the 1960s. Mental health services for children barely existed. So Rose just fell through the cracks. She meets Fred in 1968 when she's 15. He's 27, married with kids, living in a caravan and doing odd construction jobs. And within months, they're living together, and she's helping him abuse his own daughters. Let me say that again because it's important. Rose wasn't groomed into becoming a killer later. She was actively participating in abuse from the very beginning. She was 15 years old and already showing sadistic tendencies. According to Anna Marie, Fred's daughter, Rose would babysit them and be violent, cruel, would hit them for no reason and seem to enjoy it. Fred recognized something in Rose, some darkness that matched his own, and Rose found in Fred someone who would not only accept her violent urges, but encourage them. So Fred's wife, Rena, she comes back around 1971, demanding to see her daughters. Big mistake. Fred murders her, probably strangles her like he did Anna McFall, and buries her in the same field. And Fred's stepdaughter, Charmaine, who's 8 years old, she disappears in June 1971, while Fred is in prison for theft. Rose is home alone with the children, which means Rose killed her. Rose, a 17-year-old Rose West, murdered an 8-year-old girl, probably because Charmaine was difficult, or talked back, or maybe just because she reminded Rose that Fred had a whole other life before her. The other children ask where Charmaine is. Rose tells them she's gone to live with her mother. Except Rena's already dead in a field, and Charmaine is buried under the kitchen. Fred comes home from prison, and instead of being horrified, he helps move the body to a better hiding spot. He reinforces the grave, covers it properly. They turn it into a shared secret, a shared act that binds them together in the worst possible way. They get married in January 1972, with Charmaine already dead under their house. Think about that. They're standing there saying their vows, promising to love each other, and there's a murdered child beneath the building. And that's when 25 Cromwell Street becomes their hunting ground. Okay, so subscribe if you haven't already, because this next part is where the case gets truly incomprehensible. Fred buys 25 Cromwell Street in 1972. It's a rundown three-story house that needs work, which is perfect for Fred because it gives him an excuse to be constantly renovating, constantly digging, constantly making noise that might cover other sounds. He immediately gets to work modifying the house. He builds a soundproofed room in the cellar. He creates hidden spaces. He installs a pulley system in one of the bedrooms. On the surface, he's just doing construction. But really, he's building a torture chamber. And here's what's so insidious. They make it look normal. They take in lodgers, young women, students, vulnerable people who need cheap accommodation. Rose starts working as a prostitute, advertising in contact magazines, bringing clients to the house. They have more children together. The house is always full of people, always noisy, always chaotic. And in all that chaos, they're hunting. Caroline Owens, November 1972. They pick her up as a hitchhiker, offering her a job as a nanny. She's 17 years old. They take her back to Cromwell Street and brutally assault her. Both of them, Fred and Rose, together. They tape her mouth, tie her up, beat her, sexually assault her for hours. But Caroline fights back. She convinces them she won't tell anyone, that she just wants to go home. They let her go, probably figuring she's too traumatized to report it. Except she does report it. She goes straight to the police. She tells them everything. Fred and Rose are arrested and charged with assault and actual bodily harm. And here's what makes me want to scream: they get fined. Fined $50 each. The magistrate literally buys their story that it was just a bit of rough sex that got out of hand, that Caroline was a willing participant who changed her mind afterward. Caroline is treated like she's overreacting, like she's some hysterical girl who can't handle adventurous sex. The system completely fails her. And in failing her, it seals the fate of at least 9 more women. Because Fred and Rose learn another crucial lesson. Even if someone reports them, even if the police get involved, they can still talk their way out of it. They're respectable enough. Fred has his construction business, Rose is a mother, that the authorities give them the benefit of the doubt. If the system had worked right there, if someone had actually investigated properly, if someone had searched that house in 1972, they would have found Charmaine's body. They would have found evidence of the torture room. They would have stopped everything. But they didn't, and the killing continued. Linda Goff, April 1973. She's 19 years old, working in a sewing factory, living a normal working-class life. She moves into Cromwell Street as a lodger because it's cheap and close to her work. She tells her parents about the strange couple who run the place, how Rose is loud and crude, and Fred is always working on the house. On April 19th, she goes to work. She comes home, and she's never seen again. Her parents report her missing immediately. They go to Cromwell Street looking for her. Rose answers the door wearing Linda's slippers. Her slippers. Rose tells them Linda's moved out, gone to Weston-super-Mare with a boyfriend. The police don't investigate. They assume Linda's an adult who's chosen to leave, but Linda's clothes are still in the house. Rose is literally wearing her victim's belongings, and nobody digs deeper. Linda's remains are eventually found buried under the garage. She'd been decapitated, dismembered, bound with rope and tape. The level of violence suggests she was tortured before death. Carol Ann Cooper, November 1973. She's 15 years old. 15. She's at the cinema with friends in Worcester, about 30 miles from Gloucester. After the film, she goes to catch the bus home. She never makes it. Somewhere between the cinema and the bus stop, Fred and Rose pick her up. Maybe they offer her a lift. Maybe they grab her off the street. We don't know. What we do know is that she ends up in the cellar at Cromwell Street, where she's tortured and murdered. Her remains show evidence of extreme bondage: ropes, tape, a ball gag made from tights, and a plastic tube. She was kept alive for some time before they killed her. Her body is found under the cellar floor, dismembered like the others. Her family spent decades not knowing what happened to her. Lucy Partington, December 1973. And this one gets me, because Lucy was so close to escape. She's 21 years old, a brilliant student at Exeter University, about to start postgraduate work in medieval literature. She's from a good family, well-educated, careful. Not the kind of person you'd expect to disappear. On December 27th, she visits a disabled friend in Cheltenham. She leaves around 10:15 p.m. to catch the bus home. The bus stop is a 5-minute walk away. She never makes it home. And here's what haunts me. Fred doesn't dismember her body until January 6th, 10 days later. We know this because that's when he goes to the hospital with a serious cut to his hand. A cut consistent with slipping with a knife while cutting through bone. Which means Lucy was likely kept alive in that cellar for over a week. Can you imagine? A bright, educated woman, trapped in that soundproofed room, knowing she's going to die, being tortured by these two people who clearly enjoy it. Her family is frantic. Her disappearance makes the news. There are search parties. But nobody thinks to look at 25 Cromwell Street, where Fred and Rose are living their normal lives, arguing about money, raising their kids, taking in lodgers, while Lucy Partington slowly dies in their cellar. Therese Siegenthaler, April 1974. She's a Swiss sociology student hitchhiking through England, 21 years old, on an adventure, probably excited about seeing the world. She's last seen in Woolworths in Gloucester, asking about the bus to Holyhead in Wales. She never gets on that bus. Fred and Rose pick her up somewhere in Gloucester, and she becomes another victim in the cellar. Her remains are found with the same evidence of bondage and torture, the same dismemberment pattern. Her family in Switzerland spends years searching for her, hiring private investigators, never giving up hope that she might still be alive somewhere. They don't find out the truth until 1994, 20 years later. Shirley Hubbard, November 1974. She's 15 years old. 15. A schoolgirl who works part-time at a department store to earn pocket money. She disappears on her way home from her job, last seen at a bus stop in Droitwich. Her remains show evidence of the most elaborate bondage yet. Her entire head was wrapped in tape, with only a plastic tube inserted in her nose to allow her to breathe. Can you imagine the terror? Being completely blind, unable to speak, barely able to breathe, at the mercy of these people? She's in that cellar, completely helpless, and they torture her before killing her. The level of planning, the deliberate cruelty, it's beyond comprehension. Juanita Mott, April 1975. She's 18, living in a hostel for troubled young women. She's had a difficult life, been in care, is trying to get herself together. She becomes friendly with Rose, or at least Rose targets her because she's vulnerable and unlikely to be immediately missed. She goes missing on April 12th. Her remains are found in the cellar with the same pattern of bondage and dismemberment. Another young life cut short because Fred and Rose get off on inflicting pain. Shirley Robinson, May 1978. And this case is different because Shirley actually lived at Cromwell Street. She was a lodger, 18 years old, bisexual, and she becomes involved in a relationship with both Fred and Rose. It's one of those situations where she probably thinks she's found people who accept her, who understand her. Except she makes two fatal mistakes. She gets pregnant with Fred's child, and she falls in love with him. She starts getting jealous of Rose, starts making demands about the relationship, wants Fred to leave Rose for her. Fred's solution is the same as it's always been: murder. Except this time, Rose is 8 months pregnant with her own child when they kill Shirley, and Shirley is 8 months pregnant too when she dies. They bury her in the garden, along with her unborn child. When police eventually find her remains, they find two sets of bones, Shirley and her baby. Rose was so jealous, so threatened by this girl, that she helped murder her and her unborn child while carrying a child herself. The level of coldness that requires— I can't even wrap my head around it. Allison Chambers, September 1979. She's 16, from a troubled background, known to social services. She's exactly the kind of victim Fred and Rose target: vulnerable, disconnected from family, unlikely to be immediately reported missing. She's last seen in Gloucester. Her remains are found in the garden, dismembered and buried. Another teenager who never got a chance at life. But wait, it gets worse, because we haven't even fully talked about what was happening to their own children yet. And this is where the case becomes almost unbearable. Fred and Rose have 8 kids together between 1970 and 1983. Heather, May, Stephen, and 5 others. 8 children growing up in that house, surrounded by the remains of murdered women, being abused themselves, and being told this is normal. Their daughter, Anna Marie, Fred's daughter from his first marriage, later testifies that both Fred and Rose raped her repeatedly, starting when she was 8 years old. 8. Fred would take her to the cellar and assault her while Rose kept watch upstairs. Sometimes Rose would participate. When Anna Marie is 13, Fred gets her pregnant. His own daughter. She has a miscarriage, probably because of the trauma and stress. And when she finally escapes at 16, Fred tells her that if she ever speaks about what happened, he'll kill her. She believes him, because she knows what he's capable of. She's lived above the evidence for years. The other children grow up in chaos and violence. Rose is erratic, sometimes affectionate, sometimes viciously violent. She'll cuddle them one moment and beat them savagely the next. Fred is manipulative, treats the children like property, tells them lies to keep them confused and compliant. Mae West, one of their daughters, later writes about how they'd hear construction noises at night, how there were rooms they weren't allowed in, how Fred would make dark jokes about people being buried in the garden or under the patio. The children think it's just Dad being morbid and weird. They don't realize he's literally telling them the truth. Heather is born in 1970. By the time she's a teenager, she's also being sexually abused by Fred and possibly Rose. She tries to protect her younger siblings, tries to keep things normal, but the pressure is crushing her. In 1987, when she's 16, she tells a friend at school about what's happening in the house. She says she's going to report it to the police, that she can't take it anymore. The friend later says Heather seemed determined, scared, but determined. This was going to be the moment everything came out. Except Fred and Rose find out. Maybe one of the other children mentions it. Maybe they overhear something. But they realize Heather is a threat to them now. That if she talks, everything they've built will come crashing down. So on June 19th, 1987, they murder her. Their own daughter. Strangle her. Dismember her body with the same methodical precision Fred's used on all the others, and bury her in the garden. When the other children ask where Heather is, Fred tells them she's left home, that she was ungrateful, and ran away. And then he makes jokes, terrible, dark jokes, about her being under the patio or in the garden. The kids think it's just Dad being inappropriate. They think Heather ran away because home was awful, which makes perfect sense to them. Why wouldn't she run away? Except she didn't run away. She's buried in the garden, and they're walking over her grave every day. And here's what makes me genuinely angry about this case: the number of times the system could have stopped this and didn't. Caroline Owens reports her assault in 1972. Police charge Fred and Rose. The case goes to court, and they get fined. If anyone had taken her seriously, if anyone had searched the house, they would have found Charmaine's body. Game over. In 1973, Linda Guff disappears from Cromwell Street. Her parents report her missing and go to the house looking for her. Rose is wearing her slippers, wearing them, and the police don't search the house. They just accept Rose's story that Linda moved out. Multiple women disappear from Gloucester and the surrounding area throughout the 1970s. Multiple young women. And nobody connects the dots. Nobody looks at patterns. Nobody thinks to investigate the scruffy construction worker and his loud wife at 25 Cromwell Street. Anna Marie tries to tell people about the abuse. Teachers notice she's troubled, that something is wrong. But nobody pushes. Nobody investigates. She falls through the cracks. In 1992, Fred is arrested for the rape and sexual assault of his children. Multiple children testify about the abuse. There's medical evidence. This should be it, right? This should be the moment he goes to prison forever. But the case falls apart. The children are too traumatized to testify effectively in court. They're scared of Fred. They've been told their whole lives that family secrets stay in the family. The prosecution can't make it stick. Fred walks free. Can you imagine? After everything, after raping his own children, he walks free. The system looks at all the evidence and says, sorry, not good enough. It's infuriating. It's heartbreaking. And it's emblematic of how the system fails vulnerable people, especially children, especially working-class children from chaotic homes. But there's one person who doesn't give up. Detective Constable Hazel Savage. She's been bothered by the Fred West case since 1986, when she first encounters him during an investigation into child abuse. Something about him sets off alarm bells in her head. He's too smooth, too charming, too quick with explanations. When the 1992 case collapses, she keeps investigating. She starts looking into Fred's background, his previous arrests, his first marriage, the women who've disappeared from Gloucester over the years. She becomes convinced that Heather didn't run away. All the other children have at least sent Christmas cards, made phone calls. But Heather? Complete silence. For 6 years, complete silence. Fred tells her Heather is working in the Midlands, that she's happy, that she's doing well. But he can't provide any contact information, can't prove she's alive. Savage digs deeper. She finds out about Charmaine, about Rena, about Anna McFall. She starts building a case, piece by piece, knowing she's got one shot at this and she can't screw it up. In 1993, she gets authorization to start formally investigating Heather's disappearance. And finally, in February 1994, she gets a warrant to search 25 Cromwell Street. They're looking for Heather, just Heather. They have no idea what they're actually about to find. February 24th, 1994. Police arrive at Cromwell Street with digging equipment and a search warrant. Fred and Rose are both arrested. Fred for rape and assault of a minor. Rose on suspicion of involvement in Heather's disappearance. Fred initially denies everything. says Heather is alive and well, that this is all nonsense. But then the police start digging in the garden, and Fred realizes the game is up. On February 25th, he confesses to killing Heather. He tells police where she's buried. He says it was an accident, that they argued, and he just snapped. Classic Fred West. Minimize, deflect. Make it sound like a one-time thing. Police find Heather's remains, dismembered, decapitated, missing fingers and toes, the same pattern as the other victims, though police don't know about them yet. But the search doesn't stop, because Savage is thorough. She's not satisfied. She keeps them digging, and they keep finding bodies. Under the cellar floor, 6 sets of remains. 6. All young women, all dismembered, all showing evidence of torture and prolonged captivity. In the bathroom, under the floor, 1 more set of remains. In the garden, 3 more sets of remains, including Heather. The house becomes a crime scene, unlike anything Britain has seen before. Forensic teams work for weeks, carefully excavating, documenting, trying to identify the remains. The media descends on Cromwell Street. It's international news. The House of Horrors makes headlines around the world. And through all of this, Fred starts talking. He seems almost relieved that it's finally over. He confesses to killing 12 women, describes where he buried them, provides details only the killer would know. But he's still lying, still manipulating. He tries to take all the blame, says Rose knew nothing about any of it, says she was just his wife, just looking after the kids, innocent of everything, which is obvious garbage. Rose lived in that house. She wore the victims' clothes. She participated in the assaults. She helped with the murders. She buried her own daughter in the garden. But Fred's trying to protect her. Or maybe he's trying to maintain control one last time, trying to construct a narrative where he's the evil genius and she's just a bystander. The police aren't buying it. Based on Fred's confessions, police also search the fields near Much Marcle, where Fred used to live. And they find Anna McFall and Rena West, buried exactly where Fred said they'd be. That brings the total to 14 known victims, 14 women and girls murdered over a span of 27 years. But here's the thing. Fred hints at more. He makes cryptic comments about others and more in the field. He talks about the time he spent working on construction sites, traveling around England. Some investigators believe there could be more victims, maybe as many as 20 or 30. There are women who disappeared from areas where Fred worked. Women who fit the profile of his victims. But Fred never fully confesses to any others. And some of those hints might just be him trying to stay relevant, trying to maintain power by keeping secrets. We'll probably never know the full truth. Rose is initially released while they build the case against her. She goes to her father's house, tries to maintain that she's innocent, that she's a victim too. But the evidence keeps mounting. The testimony from their children. The testimony from survivors like Caroline Owens. The forensic evidence showing Rose's involvement. She's rearrested in April 1994 and charged with 10 murders. Meanwhile, Fred is in prison awaiting trial. And on January 1st, 1995, a prison guard finds him hanging in his cell. He's used strips of bedsheet to fashion a noose. He's dead. He leaves a note saying he wants to be buried next to Heather and Rena, wants to be with his victims, even in death, trying to claim ownership over them. And you know what? He never faces trial, never has to answer for what he did publicly, never has to hear the victims' families tell him what he's destroyed, never has to sit in a courtroom and face the full weight of his crimes. In a way, that's his final act of control. denying the victims' families their day in court, denying society the answers we deserve, leaving Rose to face everything alone. Some people think he killed himself to protect Rose, to keep her from being convicted because the prosecution's case relied heavily on his testimony. Others think he just couldn't face the humiliation of a trial, couldn't handle losing control of the narrative. I think he was a coward. Pure and simple. Rose's trial begins in October 1995. It's a media circus. The courtroom is packed every day. The evidence is overwhelming. Their daughter Anna Marie testifies. She's in her 30s now, and she has to stand in court and describe how her father and stepmother raped her from the age of 8, how they made her life a living hell. Mae West testifies. She talks about the abuse, the chaos, the fear that permeated every moment of their childhood. Caroline Owens testifies. She's now in her 40s, and she has to relive the assault from 1972, has to describe how Fred and Rose tortured her and how the system failed her. The prosecution presents forensic evidence, the remains, the bondage materials, the evidence of torture. They present Fred's confessions, his descriptions of how he and Rose worked together to lure, torture, and kill these women. Rose's defense is simple. She knew nothing. Fred did everything. She was a battered wife, terrified of Fred, forced to go along with things. Every bad thing in that house was Fred's doing. But it doesn't hold up. The evidence shows she was an active participant. She was violent toward the children independently of Fred. She wore the victims' clothes. She lied to their families. She helped bury Heather in the garden. And the jury doesn't buy it. On November 22, 1995, Rose West is convicted of 10 murders. Charmaine West, Heather West, Shirley Robinson, and 7 other young women who died in that house of horrors. The judge, Mr. Justice Mantell, sentences her to life imprisonment and recommends she never be released. He tells her, "If attention is paid to what I think, you will never be released." Rose shows no emotion, doesn't cry, doesn't react, just nothing. So what happens after? 25 Cromwell Street is demolished in October 1996. The Gloucester City Council decides the building has to go, that it can't stand as some kind of macabre tourist attraction. They tear it down, fill in the cellar, plant grass over it. Today, it's a pathway. There's no marker, no memorial, just a walkway connecting 2 streets, indistinguishable from any other bit of urban landscaping. The council wanted to erase the physical reminder of what happened there, but you can't erase the memories. You can't erase the trauma. The victims' families have to live with the knowledge of what happened to their daughters, their sisters. Some of them spent decades not knowing, hoping their loved ones were alive somewhere, only to find out the worst possible truth. Janet Leach, the appropriate adult who sat with Fred during his police interviews, suffered a stroke from the stress of hearing his confessions. She knew things Fred never told police, things he swore her to secrecy about. The weight of that knowledge nearly destroyed her. The children of Fred and Rose West have to live with being the children of Britain's most notorious serial killers. They've changed their names, tried to build normal lives, but the shadow of Cromwell Street follows them forever. Mae West wrote a book about her experiences. She talks about the guilt she feels, the survivor's guilt, the "what if I'd done something differently" thoughts that plague her. She was a child. There was nothing she could have done. But that doesn't stop the guilt. Stephen West, one of their sons, has spoken about the conflicting emotions, loving the parents he remembers from childhood while hating the monsters he learned they were. How do you reconcile those two things? And Rose? She's still in prison. She's in HMP New Hall in West Yorkshire, still protesting her innocence, still claiming she was Fred's victim too. She's applied for parole multiple times, denied every single time. She'll die in prison. And honestly, that's exactly where she belongs. But here's what keeps me up at night about this case, and why you need to hit that subscribe button one more time, because we need to talk about the bigger picture here. We want serial killers to fit a pattern. We want them to be loners, social outcasts, people with obvious red flags. We want them to be clearly different from normal people. Because if they're different, we can spot them. We can protect ourselves and our loved ones. But Fred and Rose West had 8 kids. They ran a boarding house. Rose had regular sex work clients. Fred did construction work for people all over Gloucester. They had neighbors who thought they were just a bit odd, but basically okay. They went to the pub, had friends, lived what looked like a normal working-class life. They hid in plain sight for decades. Multiple people reported abuse. Multiple women escaped and told police. Caroline Owens literally went to court. Anna Marie showed signs of abuse that teachers noticed. And the system failed every single time. Why? Because Fred and Rose were just respectable enough. They were white, working-class English people running a business and raising kids. They weren't the stereotype of what we think killers look like. The police believed Fred's explanations because he was charming, because he had a plausible reason for everything. The courts believed Rose when she said Caroline Owens consented because Rose was a woman, a mother, and surely mothers don't torture teenage girls, right? The system is built on assumptions about what evil looks like. And when evil shows up looking ordinary, looking domestic, looking like your neighbors or your landlord or the couple with all the kids down the street, we miss it. And the partnership aspect? That's what really gets me. Because they enabled each other. They fed off each other. They were worse together than either of them would have been alone. Rose wasn't just going along with Fred's desires. She had her own sadistic urges. She enjoyed the violence. She enjoyed the control, the sexual sadism, the torture, the killing. Those weren't things Fred forced on her. They were things she participated in willingly, sometimes enthusiastically. And Fred found in Rose someone who not only accepted his darkness, but matched it. She gave him permission, in a way. They validated each other's worst impulses. There's this concept in criminal psychology called folie à deux, shared psychosis. When two people feed each other's delusions or violent fantasies to the point where they become capable of things neither would do alone. But I don't even think that fully captures Fred and Rose. Because they weren't delusional. They knew what they were doing was wrong. They hid it. They lied about it. They were completely aware. They just didn't care. They wanted what they wanted. The control, the sexual sadism, the power over life and death. And they found each other. And together they acted on it for 27 years. That's the nightmare scenario we don't like to think about. That evil can be collaborative, can be domestic, can be hidden behind a normal-looking front door in a normal-looking street. That sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who look like everyone else. Let me break down all the opportunities that were missed, because this is important. 1972. Caroline Owens is assaulted and reports it. If properly investigated, Charmaine's body would have been found. At least 10 lives saved. 1973. Linda Goff disappears from Cromwell Street. Her parents see Rose wearing her slippers. If searched then, at least 8 lives saved. Throughout the 1970s, multiple young women disappear from Gloucester and surrounding areas. If pattern analysis had been done, if anyone had connected the dots, lives saved. 1980s. Teachers notice Anna Marie's behavioral problems. Social services are involved with the family multiple times. If anyone had pushed harder, investigated deeper, at least Heather would still be alive. 1992, Fred is arrested for child rape. Multiple children testify. Medical evidence exists. If the prosecution had been stronger, if the children had been better supported, the case might have stuck. Each of these was a missed opportunity. Each one was a chance to stop the killing and save lives. And each one failed because the system wasn't designed to catch predators who look normal. Before we wrap up, I want to make sure we remember the victims as people, not just as statistics or case numbers. Anna McFall was 18, working as a nanny, probably excited about having Fred's baby, thinking she'd finally found security. Charmaine West was 8 years old, a child who should have been protected by the adults around her. Rena West was trying to reconnect with her daughters when she was murdered. Linda Goff worked in a sewing factory, had friends and family who loved her, was just trying to live her life. Carol Ann Cooper was 15, went to see a film with friends, was just trying to get home. Lucy Partington was brilliant, kind, had her whole academic career ahead of her. Her family established a memorial award in her name at Exeter University. Therese Siegenthaler was exploring the world, having an adventure, full of life and curiosity. Shirley Hubbard was 15, working part-time to earn pocket money, probably saving up for something special. Juanita Mott was 18, trying to overcome a difficult start in life, trying to build something better. Shirley Robinson was 18, thought she'd found love and acceptance, was carrying a baby she probably wanted. Allison Chambers was 16, vulnerable and lost, deserved protection and care. And Heather West was 16, trying to protect her siblings, trying to do the right thing. These were real people with hopes and dreams and families who loved them. They weren't just victims of Fred and Rose West. They were daughters and sisters and friends who deserved so much better than what they got. So here we are at the end of this, and I hope you understand why this case is different, why it matters, why it should disturb us in ways that go beyond the obvious horror of what Fred and Rose West did. Hit that subscribe button one more time if you want more deep dives like this, where we don't just recite facts, but actually try to understand how these things happen and why they're allowed to continue. Because the real horror isn't just that Fred and Rose West existed. It's not even that they killed at least 14 people and possibly more. The real horror is that they got away with it for so long, that so many opportunities to stop them were missed, that vulnerable people, especially women and children, weren't believed when they reported abuse, that the system was so easy to game if you just looked respectable enough. The real horror is that 25 Cromwell Street could be any house on any street, that Fred and Rose could be any couple. That evil doesn't always announce itself with obvious warning signs. And maybe the most disturbing thing of all, we still haven't fully fixed the problems that allowed this to happen. Children still fall through the cracks of social services. Abuse still goes unreported or uninvestigated. Vulnerable young women still disappear and aren't taken seriously. We demolished the house, but we haven't demolished the systems and attitudes that enabled the horrors that happened inside it. So when you think about the Fred and Rose West case, don't just think about the grotesque details of murder and torture. Think about the missed opportunities. Think about the witnesses who weren't believed. Think about the children who tried to tell people and weren't heard. Think about how we can do better, how we can create systems that actually protect vulnerable people, how we can listen when people tell us something's wrong, even if the person they're accusing seems normal and respectable, because that's the only way we prevent the next Fred and Rose West. Not by looking for monsters, but by taking seriously every report of abuse, every sign of violence, every whisper that something isn't right. The victims of 25 Cromwell Street can't speak for themselves anymore. So we have to speak for them. We have to remember them. We have to learn from what happened to them. And we have to do better. Thanks for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button. Share this video if you think the story needs to be told. And I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there. And trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is.